Suppose that the length of pregnancies follows a normal distribution with a mean of 266 and a standard deviation of 16 days. We want to know what percent of pregnancies last less than 240 days, what percent last more than 240 days, what percent last between 240 and 270 days, and how long do the longest 20% of pregnancies last. Okay, so let's start. We know it's a normal distribution. Let's start with a Z formula for our very first one, and then we'll look it up. All right, so Z is 240 days minus the mean, which is 266, over the standard deviation of 16. And this gives us a negative 26 over 16, which is negative 1.63. And I've rounded this to 2 decimals since our table goes to 2 decimals. So let's go to our table and let's look up negative 1.63. So negative 1.6 is right there. We'll go over to the 3, and that's going to be 0.0516. All right, so 0.0516. So this first probability is 0.0516. Now it asked for percent, so let's change that to 5.16%. All right, now what percent lasts more than 240 days? Now remember, if it's more than, the table will not give us the answer. It will give us this 0.0516, but for more than, we have to subtract that from 1. And if we subtract 0.0516 from 1, we get 0.9484. And that's the actual answer we want for number 2. However, we want it as a percent, so that's 94.84%. All right, now, question 3. What percent of pregnancies last between 240 and 270 days? Remember, when we are doing a between problem, we have to do our z-score twice. Now, fortunately, we've already looked up the z-score for negative 1.63 for the 240. So let's do a z-score for 270. So we'll have 270 minus 266 over 16. That's going to give us 4 over 16, or 0.25. And we can look that up. So if we go to our chart, and I'll have to go to the positives, 0.2 is right there, and if we go over to 5, that's 0.5987. All right, so 0.5987. Now remember, we have to subtract these. So when we looked up the negative 1.63, it was 0.0516. So if we subtract these two probabilities, the probability that someone has a pregnancy between 240 and 270 days will be 0.471. And let's change it into a percent, 54.71%. All right, now our last one. How long do the longest 20% of pregnancies last? Now let's be careful here, because really this is talking about the longest 20% of pregnancies will be on this latter half over here. The 20% will be on this side. So when we look things up on the chart, we have to have the left side, which will be 80% or 0.80. So we need to find in our chart the closest thing we can to 0.80. All right, so in the body of the chart, the closest thing we can find to 0.80 looks like it's 0.7995, which comes from 0.84. All right, so our z value is 0.84. So let's do our formula backwards. We're going to put 0.84 on the left. We don't know what x is. That's what we're trying to find. But our mean is still 266. And our standard deviation is still 16. And let's solve that equation. Let's multiply by 16 on both sides to get it out of the denominator. Over here, we'll cancel out. And 16 times 0.84 gives me 13.44. And we have x minus 266, and let's just finish solving for x. And we'll get that x is 279.44. So any days longer than 279.44 days will be in that upper 20 percentile.